Cox. You've done the hard work, saved for retirement, built a nest egg, and bought life insurance. But when was the last time you checked who's listed as beneficiaries on the accounts you've worked so hard to build? Failing to review or update your paperwork can lead to loved ones getting the short end of the stick, or even your wishes being ignored entirely. Founder of Midland Financial, Lawrence Sprung, joins us with what you need to know. Good to see you this morning, Larry. Over the course of our lives, beneficiary designations on assets like IRAs, 401ks, and life insurance could become outdated. Tell us what's the issue and what you recommend.
Yeah, so beneficiaries are probably one of the best and easily overlooked tools that we can use to make sure our assets go to whom we want them to go to. But unfortunately, many times, as you mentioned, life events take place. We get married, have kids, or maybe even one of our previous beneficiaries passes away. That should really trigger a look to make sure that your beneficiary designations on all of your accounts are the people who you want your assets to go to in case you're not here tomorrow.
Right. It's not a set and forget thing here. And there are so many different accounts. But you're saying not to assume the same person is named on all your accounts as well. Why is that?
Yeah, don't make an assumption on who you have named. I can share a story with a family that I worked with where the gentleman, for many years, I sat down with him, we checked his beneficiaries, and he was sure it was his wife. And we looked it up, and it was not. It was his mom, because he created this account before he was married. He named his mom as the beneficiary. And I stayed on top of him, calling him constantly, saying, you really want to update this if you want your beneficiary to be your wife. And it took him about 4 years to do that. Now, the problem with that is, had he passed away within that four-year period of time, his wife would not have received those assets, and his mom would have. And then the other thing you have to understand is, if you don't have a beneficiary named at all on accounts that you can have a beneficiary, financial institutions, and depending on your state, things can act differently. In certain cases, it will just go to your estate, and then it will go through the probate process. And in other states, your spouse is the default beneficiary, which may or may not be where you want those funds to go.
So which accounts should people be looking at here when they're wanting to check?
So you should be checking all of your accounts. I mean, any account that has a beneficiary, like life insurance, 401k, retirement accounts, those are easy ones because they have beneficiaries typically attached to them. So you want to check those, but also be mindful. Bank accounts, you can have transfer on death, you can have beneficiary designations on those. And I would say any account that you have where the financial institution will allow you to name a beneficiary, I would name a beneficiary, because what happens is it allows you to direct where that money is going to go if you're not here tomorrow, and you don't have to worry about having a will or a trust. Those assets will be transitioned to the people you name as beneficiaries. So, like you go for your annual checkup, do your annual beneficiary checkup, look at all your accounts, look who the beneficiaries are, and make sure that they're current with your wishes.
And many people will have various accounts, but also have a will. And how do those two interact with each other when it comes to beneficiaries?
Yeah, so many times people will say to us, oh, you know what? I don't need to name a beneficiary because I have a will. My will take care of it. And those assets are handled very differently. Number one is, if you have a beneficiary attached to those accounts, the beneficiary designation will supersede the will. So in essence, even if you didn't have a will, those assets would go to the person that you wanted them to go to. So, don't rely on the will. And then the other thing is that if the asset does have to be transitioned to the beneficiary through the will, it has to go through probate process with a probate process. So depending on your state, that could be a long process, could be a short one, and it could be an expensive one too. So use the beneficiary for what it's used for in any place that you can use it.
Now, sometimes these designations are all right, but that's still not enough. In what situations can it be helpful to have a backup beneficiary, and what other final advice do you have for folks who are considering these issues?
Yeah, so typically people, if they name beneficiaries, they'll name a primary beneficiary, which means if I'm not around, my money will go to this person. Now, what happens is if they don't update it, then what happens, and they have nobody else, then it's going to go through their estate or their will or things like that. So you can name a primary beneficiary, the first person, and then a contingent beneficiary. So it prevents that if the primary beneficiary is not around, then the money would go to the contingent. Or in some cases, the primary beneficiary may say, I don't need this inheritance. I'm going to abstain from it and pass it on to the next generation. Whereas if you have that contingent, it's very, very helpful.
Much to look into here. So glad to have you on our show to lay out some of it and hopefully prevent some mishaps for people out there. Thank you so much, Lawrence Sprung.
Thank you.